There is an important distinction between rushing something and having a sense of urgency for something. And that was the topic of a brief email article that I sent out the other day and posted to Facebook, I think LinkedIn as well. And I got a really interesting response from one of my email subscribers. And then that led to a very interesting back and forth, a conversation. And I want to share that with you with his permission. We're changing his name. We're going to call him Mark, not his real name. I have his permission to share this with you. And I think that it gives us a chance to look to see kind of the mistakes in thinking that Mark is making, not so we can point fingers at Mark, but because it's usually easier to see what someone else is doing wrong and what they need to change in their thinking and in what they're doing. And sometimes by having a look at what someone else is doing, it helps us more clearly see what we need to change. So that's the idea in sharing this. And it also helps us get deeper into the idea of what is the difference between rushing and a sense of urgency. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that stop the independent consultant, coach, expert, service, small professional service firm owner, and so on, because we end up rushing through things rather than acting with a sense of urgency. So let me share first the distinction. Rushing to me is pushing something to move faster than it's naturally intended to move. For example, an example that I remember hearing years ago, I think from Stephen Covey, is if you're trying to get your crops to grow faster, right? You want the wheat to grow faster. You can't rush the wheat crop. And yet we often try to get things to move faster than they're naturally intended to move. Then there is a sense of urgency. And a sense of urgency is where you do not allow things to take longer than they naturally need to take. Let's go to this email conversation with Mark. Good morning, Dov. I don't think a day goes by that I don't have a sense of urgency or try to rush things. I find myself feeling frustrated when I finish my day and realize that the 2 or 3 things I identified on my drive into work as things that I wanted to complete didn't get completed due to other priorities coming up through the day. I'm a driven individual who's risen through the ranks of my industry from counter sales to branch manager over a period of 30 years. I have a very young team, all under 25, that I try to mentor and teach, but I'm forced to rush through my tasks to help them because of their current level of experience and lack of knowledge, only because they are where I was 30 years ago. Thanks for letting me vent. Warmest regards, Mark. My reply, hi Mark, happy to let you vent. I'm curious, what about my stuff earned your attention because you're a branch manager? Most of what I deal with is marketing and sales for consultants, coaches, experts, professional service firms. Dov. Good morning, Dov. Although I am a branch manager now, I was in sales for about 25 years and I still think of myself as a sales rep rather than management. As I mentioned in my original email, I have a very young and inexperienced team currently. Don't get me wrong, I see good potential in them. They have enthusiasm, 2 key traits in my opinion. I guess that my sense of urgency comes from the volume of things that I see that need to get done that unfortunately are not getting done. And so I rush through important items, ignoring some while trying to help and coach this young team. I kid myself that I'm leading from the front, but it's been pointed out to me that it's micromanagement. This leads to a standard workday of at least 11 hours plus a 3-hour total commute, a pace that I've been doing for almost 5 years, and it's starting to show on me. I keep looking for the quote-unquote magic answer that will get my team inspired and fired up, focused on the tasks that need to be done and looking for ways to improve both themselves and our service to our customers. We're a mid-sized electrical wholesaler with about 475 to 500 customers registered to our branch. My sense of urgency stems from, I think, the sheer volume of challenges that I see need to be addressed and my personal sense that we're not, therefore I am not, achieving our goals and targets. Admittedly, I am a driven individual. I've been a top sales rep in the company for many years before I took the quote-unquote promotion to the branch manager's role. Some days I greatly regret that promotion. I'm looking to find a way to share the passion that I have for sales, customer service, and the rewards those bring to not only the branch, but to the individuals. I can't let myself feel that my staff is lazy. I was their age many years ago, and I know that the priorities are different. But I do need to ignite a spark in them to help them achieve the next levels and ultimately the potential that I see in them. They're all intelligent and well-educated young people, but knowledgeable nonetheless. So back to your question, what drew me to your posts is a desire to mentor and coach my staff, but first I have to learn how to do that. Kindest regards, Mark. I reply, hi Mark, I might be reading into what you wrote something that isn't there. Feel free to ignore me. My sense from reading this is that you're trying to carry what is not yours to carry, to take responsibility for what is the responsibility of others. Abraham Lincoln, who's right here, by the way, lighting prevents you from seeing that. Abraham Lincoln said that the worst thing you can do for those you love is that which they could and should do for themselves. Dov. Mark replies, "Hi Dov, you may be correct on doing what isn't mine, but as a manager, my interpretation is that it has to get done no matter whose responsibility it is. And you're correct that it's rushing around, but I feel a sense of urgency to get the tasks completed." And I'll just step in and point out that, in my view, Mark is conflating these two the terms. The idea of rushing and a sense of urgency, he's using them interchangeably, but they're not the same. I know a lot of what I'm doing isn't my direct responsibility, but then that makes me question, how do I get those responsible to step up and do their tasks? I appreciate the point of view from someone impartial. It's harder than I realized trying to manage other people and balance my responsibilities and their responsibilities. That seems to be my biggest failure, and I cannot just let things be undone. That's how I succeeded in sales. Just make it happen was my standard of business, and my customers knew that if I told them something would get done or something would happen, that's what occurred. I still feel that way, and I'm trying to install that sense of ownership in my staff, and I think I'm failing miserably. Mark. Hi Mark, you're trying to install a sense of ownership in them for their responsibilities, but you're not yet taking ownership for your responsibilities, which as a manager is not to ensure the work is done. You're responsible to ensure the work is done at a high enough level by the people who are responsible for getting it done. When you take ownership of your responsibilities, you'll be amazed to see how your employees follow your lead and take responsibility for theirs. If I were you, I'd take some time to really reflect on this. I hope you receive this message in the way it is intended. It's one outsider's perspective, maybe right or wrong. Dov. Hi Dov, likely right perspective. I've been told before to delegate, but I have a hard time letting go. Mark. Mark, don't think of it as delegating. Think of it as leading and building your people. That's what your job really is. Dov. Now there are a lot of levels that we could approach this conversation with Mark's situation. In my email conversation with him, I chose to focus on highlighting the fact that he's not a victim of his circumstances, but there really is a lot that he can do to change. And that's a prerequisite for all of us. We really need to be able to see that we are causing, to a great degree, our situation, perhaps completely. And if we change the cause, that means us. If you become the one who naturally causes the results that you want, as opposed to the one who causes the results that you have, then your life changes, your business changes rapidly. So I really want him to see that, because he said things such as, I'm forced to rush through my tasks. It's not true, right? So that was really what I focused on in my back and forth with him. I wanted to help him see that, right? He's got to focus on his responsibility, which is not just to make sure the tasks get done. His responsibility is to make sure that his people learn to do their jobs the way they should be doing them. Now, let's connect this back to the idea, the distinction between rushing and a sense of urgency. If you're training a team, you're rushing it if you're not giving it the time, you're not giving the people the time they naturally need to learn the skills. If instead you're jumping, you're coming in and you're rushing and getting the job done, doing the tasks instead of them, you are rushing. You are not allowing things the time that they naturally need to grow. However, sense of urgency in this situation, you're focused on what you're really responsible for, what you really are trying to achieve, and that is you're looking to get to a place where your people are performing their tasks at the right level. The sense of urgency then directs you to focus on the few things that will enable your team to grow, to move forward at the highest possible level. We think of that as the critical 10% that gives you 90% of what you want. The critical 10% that makes you look brilliant 90% of the time. You don't have to be doing everything. You've got to take the time to step back, stop rushing, stop reacting, take the time to step back and take a view, a look across everything you're doing. Of all the things I'm doing, is any of it actually giving me what I want? In Mark's case, after 5 years, I'd argue very little, if any. This is really the core idea as it applies to those of us who are looking to create a consistent flow of ideal clients. It's the same thing. There's this tendency to get caught up in activity, in doing and doing and doing. And we're rushing rather than operating with a sense of urgency, rather than working towards kind of getting a clear picture of what am I really trying to achieve and why, and now what is the shortest path, what is the critical 10% that gives me 90% of what I want. If you found any of this to be insightful, then help us to help more people by liking it, sharing it, commenting. Also, if when it comes to creating a consistent flow of your own ideal clients, you do believe that you tend to be rushing far more than acting with a sense of urgency, then block off 35-40 minutes now and go watch my free training. It's called The Missing 5%, The Honest Secret to a Consistent Flow of Ideal Clients. And the idea here is that you probably don't need more and more information. I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you've already read books on marketing and sales and getting clients and taking courses and programs and so on. You're not missing all that knowledge. What you need is something that zeroes your focus in and your activities day to day on the few things that really matter. So go to dovgordon.net/missing5, MISSING 5. And I think you'll find this to be a very insightful and very helpful practical framework. No more rushing. Time to act with a sense of urgency.